No, I guess we can get started. So, good morning. Hi, I'm Jesse. First thing, very important. I'm American, so I often talk very fast, and I use really strange expressions. If I say something that does not make sense to you, wave your hands or say, "Hey, Jesse," or something. Because if you don't understand, probably nobody understands. It's okay to interrupt and ask questions. I'm American. I'm used to people being rude. So feel free to stop me and say, "Hey, Jesse." Right. So I keep mentioning, I'm going to turn, it's going to flash. Oh, it's only flashing on my screen. Okay. From Boston, the States, most of what I do historically is Perl hacking, though these days I seem to have gotten suckered into writing code in Java. One of my hobbies is that I'm the Perl 5 pump king. I'm the guy who's responsible for making sure that other people do lots of work and that 5.12 came out and that 5.14 will come out next month. I hack on Android stuff, an email client called K9 for fun. I used to do Kindle ebook hacking. And a long time ago, I used to be the project manager for Perl 6. Finding me on Twitter, I'm Obra. Email, that's the best email. That's Facebook. And because I'm an American, I don't understand Plurk. But why I'm here today is I'm here to talk about RT, Request Tracker. It's all my fault. I was the original author. And now I think 10 years ago, I started a company called Best Practical to sell support and training and stuff for RT. These days, I'm the project lead. And all that being project lead means is that I have some very good engineers who work for me who don't let me write much code anymore. It's the, oh yeah, no, Jesse's code? Nah, not good enough. So I am a vendor. This is always a little weird. So I sell support, I sell training, I sell custom development, I come to your company and I look at how you do things and I try to show you why it's wrong. This is not a vendor talk. I am not here to try to sell you anything, and that should be pretty obvious. Our software is all open source, so at the very worst, you can just take it. We have 4 offices: Boston, Moscow, Hangzhou, and Pinglin Township. We're 11 people. So it's not big offices. Boston is almost everybody, and everyone else is one person. How many people here have used RT before? Or seen RT? Or have used some ticketing system? Okay, so lots of people. How many people here have used Open Foundry? The very first versions of Open Foundry were actually built on RT. So RT is GPL'd. You can make changes to it and give them away. You can keep them internally. It's about 15 years old. It gets downloaded about 100 times every day and has been for at least the last 5 years. So it's, for back office software, for enterprise software, it feels like a fair number of places actually use RT. When I say a ticketing system, what I mean is it's a system that keeps track of things that need to get done. So when you first log into an RT instance, this is what you'll see. Actually, probably easier for me to point at it in Chinese and hope to remember what everything correctly is. So you log in, and the first thing you'll see is new tickets that no one is dealing with. So every ticket has a unique number. Every ticket has a description that's its subject. Tickets are broken into queues. And what a queue is it's sort of like, it's almost like a little mini separate system. It can have different access control. It can have different business rules. It can track different custom data. So some tickets, like help desk tickets, it might be, is this a Mac or a PC? Operations tickets might be, what is the IP address of the server? So lots of different custom fields can get set up. You can bookmark tickets. You can get an overview of what tickets are in the system, how many are new, how many are open. You can search for things. You can create tickets. This is sort of it. The system is about tracking stuff. And I need to be able to get back to my slides. So tracking what needs to get done, and also tracking what did happen or what didn't happen. So one of the very important parts of any ticketing system is history. History should be unchangeable. It should be immutable. If something happens on a ticket, if you send the wrong reply to a customer, it's there forever. It may be the wrong thing. It shouldn't have been what you said, but it's important to know that you sent it. It's very important for auditing and history purposes. So anything you do to a ticket gets recorded. And then, of course, there's lots and lots of metadata we track. So for every ticket, RT tracks when the ticket was created, when someone started working on it, when it was due, when we decided to finish or when the ticket was finished. It can track, let's see if I get a mouse pointer it can track relationships between tickets. So you can say this ticket has these little pieces, these are sub-tickets. So it can be used for project management. Dependencies between tickets, you can say, we can't finish moving to the new data center until we sign the data center contract as separate tickets. RT tracks the person who requested the ticket, the person who is responsible for the ticket, other people who should get mail about the ticket, other staff who are working on the ticket, and it gives you a little heads up about the person who reported the ticket. On the back end of any ticketing system, you have some sort of business logic. It allows you to say, when we get a ticket from the boss, it becomes very important automatically. When we get a ticket from one of our paying customers, it's this important. When we get a ticket from a free customer, maybe a little less important. If a ticket contains the word emergency, page the sysadmin. Something just paged me. So that's what business logic lets you sort of set up rules that happen when you do things to tickets. Access control, of course, is very important in any system like this. In RT, you can say that either that individuals or specific groups of people or people who are the requester or owner of a ticket have the right to see it, the right to modify it, the right to see certain parts of it. For custom fields, one by one, you can say, these users have the right to see this field, these users don't, these users have the right to see this other field, and so on. But essentially, a ticketing system is a to-do list. Everybody here has had a to-do list before, right? And you never get everything done, but that's okay. That's the point of the list. But a ticketing system is a to-do list on drugs, on really, really serious drugs. But I mean the steroid kind of drugs and not the raver kind of drugs. Or I guess that's actually Burning Man. But really, every ticket has a unique ID, every ticket has timestamps, and as I said before, you can't edit history. Ticketing systems, RT gets used for everything from network operations and work orders and bug tracking. There's a company in the Caribbean that uses it to do vacation rental tracking, which properties are available, who has written in and asked for things. There is a youth counseling service for teenagers who have sort of trouble in Germany that uses RT to let counselors interact with troubled teenagers by email. And because of German privacy laws, the ticketing system actually hides information about the kids who write in from the counselors, so that there is some base level of anonymity, not real anonymity, but so it gets used for all kinds of crazy things. At Best Practical, we use RT for our bug tracking, of course, for support contracts, for development contracts. So when we're doing a project for a customer, all of the email we send back and forth with them goes through RT. And RT figures out when someone sends mail, who sent this? Who needs to get a copy? And so we have a shared logged history of everything we've said to the customer and everything the customer said to us. So this means when the customer says, I never told you that it had to be da-da-da-da-da, we can say, well, on Tuesday the 4th of May, you said, when people submit resumes to try to get jobs with us, creates a ticket. When people send in sales inquiries, it gets a ticket. When we learn about something that we might want to try to sell to someone, it gets a ticket. When we need to pay somebody, when they send us an invoice, it gets a ticket. When somebody needs to pay us, it gets a ticket. Everything gets a ticket. So these slides are always, so lots and lots of companies use RT. These are ones who've written to our mailing list and who didn't make us sign things saying we can't use their name. There also is a user-maintained list of organizations that use RT, sometimes from the people who use RT, and sometimes from people who get tickets from them. I once submitted a question to Facebook and got back RT ticket 6,000,004, and we've never talked to Facebook. I know since then they have their own thing, but so when I talk about scaling, RT, you can do development on your laptop. It's not difficult. You can run it with SQLite and this tiny little embedded web server. That's no problem. At the big side, it scales up to the biggest RT I know about is 40 to 70,000 tickets every day. So somewhere around a ticket created every single second. And they claim it's perfectly fast for them. They have a couple of front-end app servers, and they have a giant database cluster. So, it's as you need it. You can run it on an old, Atom netbook, or you can run it on a gorgeous cluster of modern machines. When we created RT2, when I created RT2, because nobody helped me back then, it wasn't very pluggable. If you wanted to make a change, you just hacked at it. And I once had somebody write to me and say, Jesse, I found this bug. Can you fix this bug? And I said, well, we fixed that bug 6 weeks ago and we have a new release out. He's like, I'm using RT 2.0.7. Well, we fixed it in 2.0.8. He says, well, I translated every word in the user interface into Portuguese. I'm never going to upgrade. So we learned that lesson a long time ago. So RT is hookable and pluggable and overlayable, and it's designed to be locally customizable. So there are lots and lots of RT plugins. This is a brief list of some of the plugins that we've written. But there are lots more of them on CPAN, created by end users. So this talk is about RT4, at least nominally. And when HC got me to give the talk got me to agree to give the talk in about December, it was going to be out in January. Didn't happen. But we did get RC1 out right about Christmas, and we're now at RC7. So over the course of the last 3 months, we've fixed a lot of bugs and made it a lot better. And that's what happens when you take a major new release and you try to get people to run it in production. There's a reasonably good chance you will actually see the final release next week. I really wanted it to be last week, and we tried really hard so I could get up on stage and say, RT4 is out! And not, I wanted it to be out, and I'm really sorry. But just in terms of time frame, like 2 weeks, not so bad, because HC has been asking me to give this talk since 2006, since this was YAPC Asia and not OSDC. Every year, I've been telling him, I'll do it next year. It'll be ready next year. Yeah. So that's what this talk is mostly about. We started working on RT4 in 2007. It is now 2011. When we started work on RT4, I named the branch in our version control system, which was Subversion back then, 3.999 dangerous. Because we have some end users who anything we check into Git, they will run. So if we commit something to version control, they will deploy it in production because they're crazy. So the only way I could think of to make them not able to complain if they did this and it broke was to call it dangerous. In literature, there's a word called foreshadowing. And what that means is that when the author writes something that, when you think about it later, it was obvious what was going to happen. So 3999, dangerous, foreshadowing. A couple times every year, I do public trainings about RT. And I talk a little bit about RT's history. And so I just copied and pasted the slides I used there into this talk, both because it's useful to see the history and to make my point. RT 0.9, I was a summer intern at a .com. and there was a web design shop. I was the second sysadmin. I was half-time programmer, and I was a half-time sysadmin, which meant I was a half-time programmer and a full-time sysadmin. Before that, all of the support tickets had gone into my boss's email. And she said, well, we need a ticketing system. I said, okay, I used one at university. It was very good. And she said, I know that guy. You can't run his software on my servers. Never. His software's awful. You'll write one. Okay. So I wrote one. It was designed for the two of us and 30 end users. No web interface, command line and email only. RT 1.0 happened, a couple years later, because people kept telling me that they wanted copies and using the copies I had given them. It got used. There was a company that was doing every DSL deployment in the US that wasn't done by Verizon. Every time Verizon screwed them on a DSL install, it generated an RT ticket. Verizon screwed them a lot. They were doing about 1,000 tickets a day and had a call center. And this was awful. This was my first Perl program. It was really bad. So I felt very guilty. And I rewrote it from scratch, just after I ran away from Microsoft in 2001. You know, it didn't have frames anymore. It was basically kind of modern. RT3.0 was a couple years later. We gutted the UI. I learned my lesson about making software extensible. It was internationalized. The first language it spoke was traditional Chinese. It had custom fields, so you could say, I want this field and this field and this field on my tickets. And it had a test suite. Yeah, it took that long. But it was a long time ago, and we didn't know any better then. 3.2 came out in 2004. It added lots of cool stuff. 3.4 came out in 2005, and it was a lot faster, and it added lots of cool stuff, and it had more tests. 3.6 came out in 2006. The UI got a lot prettier, and it had a lot more tests. 3.8 came out in 2008. It had lots and lots of user preferences. You could actually change the style of the pages. It had a lot more tests. It had PGP integration. It had calendar integration. You could click a little button and favorite tickets, just like you can in Gmail. And then there was this slide. This was the next slide in my training deck. The next slide, it said this: never trust a vendor who makes a promise about software they haven't released. That was really the slide I had in my training deck. It was kind of a joke, but it was kind of the truth, because, I'm a vendor, and I can't, you haven't paid me to do something. I can make a promise. I might not keep it. But I didn't really know just how wrong I was. So everybody here knows that 4 is an unlucky number, right? You're supposed to just skip 4. My partner is Taiwanese. He owns part of the company. We have Taiwanese, we've had interns in Taiwan who've worked on RT4. We've had interns in the PRC who've worked on RT4. Nobody told me that 4 was an unlucky number until last night. 4 years into the project. See, in my culture, where I come from, 4 is not the unlucky number. 6 is the unlucky number. Like Perl 6. Perl 6 is now 8 years late, 9 years late. I used to be the project manager. I'm allowed to say this. But so, right around 2006, we did, there's 6 again. We started thinking about building RT4. We started looking at what about RT4 is good and what about RT is good and what about RT is bad. And so RT is as such things go, it's a big piece of Perl software. It's a couple 100,000 lines between code and templates. When I say big, it's a big thing. But that also means there's been a lot of stuff that's gone into RT, and it's been built up and designed over time. And any piece of big software, over time it gets pretty complex. Untangling complex software can be difficult, but is important to do. Complexity isn't all bad, though. Having complexity that, it can do a lot of stuff. It's very flexible. The other thing is that RT has been around for a very long time, and software that's been around for a very long time is not very modern, but there's often a lot of wisdom baked into it. So that concludes the HSBC ad portion of the talk. But so we started looking at what we would do. And the first thing we started thinking about was modernizing the API. RT's API is 10 years old. And CPAN was smaller then. Modern Perl standards weren't as strong then. And so there were a lot of things we did that since then we and everyone else have agreed are not necessarily the best way to build an API. Over time, a lot of the RT work we've done for clients has been done, it's been paid. And so clients will come to us and say, we need RT to do X, Y, and Z. We need RT to let you delegate any of your rights to another user. We need RT to, and some of the features that we've implemented for clients later turned out to be very bad ideas. Some of them turned out to be, to make things slower, to make things harder to use, but we had committed to them and they were there. But yes, Ingi? Can
I read that slide as remove the Audrey years?
No, actually. But you can, you can read it any way you want. That's not quite what I mean. So there were lots of things that we couldn't do while keeping it sort of in the middle of a stable series, 3.2, 3.6, 3.4, 3.6, 3.8. People expected things not to break. So this was going to be our once in every 10 years, break everything and make the world better. We decided we'd use a web framework. Jifty, which we built for other applications, made Ajax-y stuff magic. It had a clean modern API. It actually would expose a clean web services API. It made testing a lot easier. It was based on Plaque, so we could get rid of all of our web server magic. It could manage database schema automatically. It had helpers that let us build UI. And we started hacking. We started refactoring. We weren't going to do a from-scratch rewrite. We thought about throwing out the whole thing and building again. And we decided that was too much. But it was, in the end, pretty close to what we actually ended up doing over time. We didn't have a deadline, because this was internal engineering. And we wanted to make sure that it was good. And so we didn't commit to when it would be done. We just said it'll be ready when it's ready. And we knew we wanted it to be good, but there wasn't a fixed, this is the minimal set of things we need to release. This is when it will be done. We want to make sure it's good. We started hacking. Obviously, things went wrong. We did a lot of moving files around. There's a lot of stuff that when we put things in places, the Linux file hierarchy standard wasn't actually all that standard when we started. And so there were a lot of things that were in the wrong places. And so we started moving files. Git makes that sort of okay. You can merge and it will track things. But we also started modernizing our coding style. We started renaming methods. We started renaming classes because we've learned a lot of things about what was wrong over time. RT's old API was intercapped, camel case. But in general, Perl code these days is underscore separated, all lowercase. We built tools that helped us migrate code from the old style to the new style. We started by porting the entire test suite. So the first thing we modernized and cleaned up was the test suite. So we could run all of the tests and they would all fail. And then bit by bit, we made them start passing. And at the time, we of course had customers and production development, and so the other branch continued development, which meant we were fixing bugs, we were adding features, and we were merging. And every time we did a merge, it was basically like having to do the port over again. Because while Git is magic, it's not that magic. But 3 years in, RT399 was basically done. It was 40% less code than RT 3.8. It had almost the same features as RT 3.8. So a lot less code, almost the same features. The test suite was almost identical. The code was actually a lot prettier looking. The code was a lot easier to work with. It was a lot simpler. It ran on Jifty, which meant, yes, we had a whole mess of new dependencies, but a lot of the complexity had been abstracted away. GIFT ran on Plaque, which meant that all of the old ways that people had to custom configure their web servers to run RT was no longer necessary. They used the modern Plaque ways. We'd implemented a new ticket lifecycle system. So what I mean by that is that in RT3, tickets have a status. A ticket can be new, can be open, can be stalled, can be resolved, can be rejected. And you can go from any status to any status. And it's sort of the same for the entire system. With this, you could say a ticket can only go from new to open. From open, it can only go to stalled or resolved. From stalled, it can only go to open. And so you can define very complex workflows and life cycles very easily. It was pretty cool, but that was sort of one of the major new features. We had taken a lot of the UI and moved it from Mason to template declare. Template declare is a templating language that is basically actually executable Perl. And so what that meant is that we could subclass, refactoring was easy, we could reuse components, and all kinds of things were compile time validated rather than runtime validated. It was a lot easier to work with. And it was, in fact, a lot better. Lots of awful old decisions we'd made were dead, gone. The problem is it was mostly better for us. So this is about 2,600 commits over 3 years, and an awful lot of code changes. You will note that there are a lot more minuses than pluses. We actually got rid of a lot of code, and we did add features. So it was different than 3.8. It was similar, but different. The API, you could tell that the API for 3.8 and 3.9.9 came from the same place. So it was recognizable, and there are ways in which it was better, but it was also 100% incompatible. Lots and lots and lots of good reasons to do this. The problem is there are also lots and lots and lots of extensions to RT. So I showed that list before. There are at least 75 extensions we've built for RT for end users that we've made public. Lots of other people have built them too. And every RT instance has been customized at least a little bit. Ingi, your RT, a little customized? Okay. I think your RT has been custom. Your coworker showed it to me. I pick on Ingi because he's my friend and I know he has an RT instance that's been customized.
And I use it.
And he uses it.
And I interface with it and I program around it and I don't really care if it's been customized or not.
Awesome. So, as I said before, RT's been downloaded about 100 times a day, every day for the last 5 years. That's a lot of downloads. It's deployed in a lot of places. Has anybody ever here customized some software? Have you ever made changes to software that you downloaded or used? Even a little change. Okay. I'm seeing lots of hands go up as yeah. When you change an API, guess what happens? Have you ever, after you customized a piece of software, tried to upgrade and had that upgrade break your customization? I at least see smiles, sad smiles in the audience, so I know that some of you understand the pain I'm getting to. RT does, in fact, have an awful lot of users. And they rely on an awful lot of RT extensions. This is just sort of the list of stuff that we've put out there. So, everything from RTFM, which is the knowledge base for RT that lets you take a ticket's history and turn it into a reusable answer. And then lets you pick answers from a drop-down when you reply later. So, fairly important piece of technology for a call center because there's no cut and paste, and because you often say the same thing over and over to your users, it's pick, click, which saves somewhere around 30 seconds in interaction, which is a big deal in a call center. There are things like email completion. So when you start typing an email address into the system, it gives you a drop-down of all of the email addresses that match what you're typing. There are things like CAPTCHAs, so that if you have a public RT, you can help cut down on spam. A Gantt chart view for project management. S-MIME integration. We have PGP built in, but S-MIME is still a plugin. The ability to send email to RT, PGP sign it, and have it perform commands on the system. And I'm just kind of picking random things out here. But there are an awful lot of RT extensions that an awful lot of people use. and every single one of them was broken. When I say every single one of them, I mean every single extension, which would mean every single user. Now it's really cool. RT399 had 40% less code than 3.8. And it looked identical. It had almost the same features. Now there was one really big change. In RT3, I've mentioned business logic over and over. So our business logic system is called scripts. They're sort of like little tiny scripts or subscriptions that you can do when things happen. So you can think of them as an if-then statement. So anytime an update happens to a ticket, it runs the if parts. It says, if this update matches what I'm trying to do, then do something. Send some email, bump the priority up, move it over there, reject it, do a lookup in some other database, and ceasefire after any kind of update to a ticket. RT has an approval system that people use for purchase orders and work orders, all built on scripts. All of RT's email sending, so when it replies to an end user when they create a ticket, or when a staff person sends in mail, that all uses scripts. They're in fact pretty powerful, but they're not everything you could possibly want. They're just if-then statements. And if our programming languages only had if-then statements, they would be sad. Scripts are in fact the only big piece of RT that we hadn't changed since RT 2.0, which would be going on 10 years. And so we decided that we were going to replace the script system in 3.9.9. It was going to be the one big feature, the one giant change that made it worth doing. And I really wanted a tiny little macro language. So if-then loops, maybe greater than, less than, and some fairly basic primitives like change the ticket status, like the ability to do at least a chain of things rather than just one if-then statement and then another if-then statement. So I wanted a pretty simple macro language. People here know CL Cow? My partner CL? CL was the guy who was designing the back end. And CL heard what I wanted, and his take on it was, if we're going to go and build a little custom language, it shouldn't be a stupid macro language. It should be a proper language. It sounds like what you want is a small Lisp. I'm going to build you a small Lisp. My response to this was roughly ORZ. And so it ended up being named Lorzy. Lorzy was, in fact, Lisp-like. That's where the L came from. It had named typed parameters. So that actually meant that it was a lot easier to introspect it and to snap together things. But we ripped out the script system and we dropped Lorzy in. We started building a graphical builder to make it hopefully eventually easy for people to deploy this. And that's about where we got to, so this is called Greenspun's 10th rule of computer science. And while RT is not implemented in C or Fortran, it turns out this applies to any large system. We ended up with an informally specified, we had a test suite, so it's kind of like a spec. And I don't think we played with it long enough to know exactly how buggy it was. CL writes pretty good code. But it was a slow implementation of probably about half of Common Lisp. So the only thing I can say in our defense is that at least we meant to put a Lisp into the system. So at this point, do you want to run RT399? I get one ironic woo, so I think you get my message. I really don't like hurting users, especially when they pay me money. So last year, we did something that was really, really painful. We took 3 years of hard work and we threw it away. I don't like throwing away large chunks of work, but we did learn an awful lot of stuff. This is perhaps the only useful part of the talk. So there's a thing called second system syndrome. What's the Chinese for second system syndrome? Does anyone have a Good. Is it called second system syndrome? Okay. The idea of second system syndrome is you build something once and it mostly works, and then you decide you're going to throw it away and you're going to do it right, and you're going to do all of the things that you meant to do the first time, and it grows and grows and gets complex and is flexible in ways you don't need. Second system syndrome is a kind of big problem. This is Perl 6's mascot, Camellia. This is what Camellia says. Perl 6 at least is, honest about the fact that it is a second system, and it has a problem. But my problem is that I don't want to have second system syndrome. My problem is that I like my users. Things we learned. We started with a working test suite that covered all the behavior that RT has. And it turns out that that is insufficient. What we tried to do is we tried to do a massive renovation. We started by taking out the lowest layers of the system and swapping in something more modern. And that meant that the way people interacted with databases changed, the way people interacted with web servers changed, the way people customized the system changed. When you have a big old system, there's a huge cost to trying to do the big modernization that you really want to do. If you have a working system, fix it slowly, in small bites, tiny little changes. Make the changes for actual users. We didn't have a customer for RT4. We were doing RT4 because it was the right thing to do, which meant that we just kept going. What clients usually say is that they want really good work, they want it last week, and they'd rather not pay for it at all. What consultants and developers often say, the English phrase is, good, fast, and cheap. Pick any two. You could have it really good and get it soon, but it's going to be very expensive. You can get it very soon, and you can have it cheap, but it won't be very good. You can have it good and cheap, but it's going to take us forever. And so that's, you can't have all three. What I don't think I ever actually realized is that you have to pick two of them. You can't pick only one. You can't say, we want it really good, so we can spend as much money as we want and take as much time as we want. We want it really soon, so it doesn't have to be any good and we can spend a lot of money. We want it really cheap, so it doesn't matter when it gets done or what it does. You must pick two. You can't say we only want it good, or we only want it fast, or we only want it cheap. The project will fail. So last summer we started over. We threw it out. This time it worked a little better. I ended 11, is that right? So what we did this time, we were building it for an actual customer. We had somebody who wanted RT3.8, but with lots and lots of those extensions, and some new ones. But they wanted to make sure that we would continue to maintain those extensions. And so for a lot of them, we were willing to let them pay us to integrate those extensions. They actually had a deadline. They're a university. And so there are 2 times a year when they could upgrade. And if we blew it on one, we had to wait 6 months, which didn't only mean 6 months to deploy, but 6 months to get paid. We had a fixed set of deliverables. They handed us a spec. Unfortunately, when a customer hands you a spec, it's not really that you have a fixed set of deliverables. You have a mostly fixed set of deliverables. Things always change. But so we got hacking. One of the things the client really needed was frequent beta releases to prove to them and their management that we were working and that it was right. So it was really important that the new system be actually runnable in production anytime they wanted it. So so it needed to stay deployable, which meant that each change got done on its own topic branch in Git and merged in. We started taking individual features that we had already built for other systems, or for other customers and for ourselves, and pulling them in as new features. We took RTFM, the RT Fact Manager, our knowledge base, and integrated it into the core of RT. RTFM provides stock answers. It's really, really useful, but about half the time I go to client sites and they show me that they're running a call center, they're not using it. So now they don't get a choice. It's installed automatically. I talked about life cycles earlier. That we actually built for 3.9.9, then we backported to 3.8 because the client needed it, and then we integrated it into 3.9. We had a mobile interface that we built for, well, that we actually built for fun, that we integrated into 3.9, so it's now a core part of RT. We added new date custom field types. So custom fields can now include dates or times, or date times. They're time zone aware, they're searchable by ranges. We added IP address custom fields, both IPv4 and IPv6, ranges of v4, ranges of v6. We added full text search on MySQL and Postgres and Oracle, which again was something we had built for a client as a standalone extension. We added Gmail-style folding of ticket history, so you get, rather than having very long bits of history in your tickets, you get those little click here to show more. It actually makes it much more usable. It's a small little bit of JavaScript, but it makes it more usable. Sorry, a small bit of JavaScript and then a very complex parser to parse HTML mail and find where folding happens. We built a bunch of new features from scratch. We built some new auditing and debugging tools, things that show you every SQL query that was run on a given page in RT. This is stuff we had for free in Jifty. This is stuff that just magically worked back in the Jifty days. And we had to build a version that's not as cool from scratch, but it didn't change anything about RT. So it just keeps working. We redid the theme so that RT sort of feels more modern. The menu, you go to a menu and they hover down. You've got more white space on the page. One of the things the customer needed and lots of other customers need is the ability to customize branding. So it used to be for RT, you would just go hack the CSS files. Now we have a CSS file in the web UI that you can change yourself. You can upload a logo, and it will automatically guess the right colors for your RT theme from the colors in your logo. We redid the rules editing interface, the permissions editing interface in RT, so it makes it much easier to grant rights to users. We added drop-down and radio button custom field types instead of pick one from a list and pick many from a list, traditional way they're rendered. We integrated the autocompleters that I talked about, and we ported it to Plaque. So we did, in fact, throw away the way we used to do web server configuration, but it's not actually that different. This still cut out a lot of code and cut out a lot of bugs, and now we use more standard infrastructure and can deploy in more places. There is stuff we did under the hood. A lot of stuff about how RT does boilerplate code went away. So there are many fewer files than there used to be. We hacked out a lot of our use of autoconf. So when you autoconf on RT instance, less stuff changes. We did a lot of work to clean up the test suite. So the test suite is easier to work with, easier to read. We killed a lot of, over the years, many not really warnings, but notice messages snuck into the test suite. So you ran the tests, they all passed, but it would say things as it went by. So now it runs perfectly clean, and we know who breaks it whenever it breaks. We delivered it to the customer successfully on deadline, and it worked, and they're running it, and they're happy. But we found a lot of stuff that we could make better, and so we've been cleaning and improving docs and fixing bugs. And RC1 came out when they needed it, right after Christmas. RC7 came out last week. I really thought that I was going to get to say, and it's released, or to push the button and release it here. We're really close. It didn't quite happen. But it is at the point where we run it in production. We have customers run it in production. We're just not quite ready to bless it as the release version. If you want to try it, you can get it from either of these places. And those are both linked from the front page of bestpractical.com. And when I say RC, or release candidate, I mean it is a candidate for release, which means we believe it is ready for production. And then we find little things and we fix them. But
if you want to run it in production, now is a fine time to run it in production. If it breaks, we need to know about it. If it breaks, tell us. Email us. So yeah, that's my talk. I'm sorry I went quickly toward the end. Questions? No questions? Comments? Complaints? No, you cannot have a pony, Ingy. Jifty is the web framework that comes with a pony. We got rid of Jifty, so there's no pony for you. Yes? Where can you upload your translations? Good question. But first I need to tell Ingy that he cannot have a pony. Maybe I can have. So RT is translated at launchpad.net. And if my network is not working, I cannot show you. But the project name is RT. It's on Launchpad. And you can go in, and if you speak a language, you can go in and update that language's translations. I think I can actually click through here in my minute and a half left. Help translate. And our Japanese translation does need a lot of help. Our Chinese translations appear to be mostly okay, though I know that a lot of even the traditional Chinese was translated by a mainlander, so there may be things you want to fix. But if we click in here, so some things don't. So it shows you all of the phrases that are in here, and you can look at. Anyway, so that's Launchpad. RT is translated into many, many languages at varying levels of doneness. So Persian is one of the worst, and Chinese is among the best. If you speak any of these languages or any other languages, please help make RT speak your language better. But Ingy, no, you cannot have a pony. Not yours. All right, I am now. Any last question before I get off the stage and let next speaker go? Okay. Thank you all for listening to me rant. I hope it made a little bit of sense. Thank you.